got to see what you see. You are doing a great work in me. I've decided I can't stand still. No, you have given me purpose. All my heart is yours. All my life is yours. I will make a move for you, for you. All my heart is yours. All my life is yours. I will make a move for you. Make a move for you. Make a move, make a move. Make a move for you. I will make a move, make a move. Make a move for you. I will. I'll take up the call to serve you. You have given me a job to do. I wanna love the world just like you. Yeah, you have given me purpose. All my heart is yours. All my life is yours. I will make a move for you, for you. All my heart is yours. All my life is yours. I will make a move for you. Make a move for you. Make a move, make a move. Make a move for you. I will make a move, make a move. Make a move for you. I will. Make a move.
Good day, space travelers! It is I, Jacob, and I'm here to take you to the very edge of the universe, or at the very least, the very edge of initiative. Initiative is seeing what needs to be done and doing it. Initiative is very important. Too often we see what needs to be done and we don't do it, usually because flashing red light. Red light? What could that mean? I'll have to check the space travel manual. Red light. Ah, red light. Computer malfunction alarm. To reset computer, press the blue button. Okay, good. Where was I? Yes, initiative. I was saying that sometimes we see what needs to be done, but then we don't do it because a blue flashing light. Blue light, blue light, blue light, blue light. Clogged toilet. To unclog, press the orange button. That'll do the trick. Man, it's really hard to focus around here. What I was saying was, a flashing orange light? Okay. Orange light, orange light. In today's story, we'll hear more about Nehemiah rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem. A really difficult job. Orange light. Got it. Whew. I hope Nehemiah doesn't lose focus. Oh, man. What could that alarm be? Oh. I just got a text message. See you in a few.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Nehemiah, chapters 2, 4, and 6.
When Nehemiah traveled to Jerusalem and surveyed the broken down walls, he saw immediately what had to be done.
We must rebuild.
God moved the hearts of the people to join him.
Let's get started!
Hooray!
But while the Jewish people were eager to repair the tumbled down walls and ruined gates, the people in the lands around them were not so thrilled.
What do they think they're doing?
A city with no walls stood open to attack. The people inside could never become a strong nation. The enemies of the Jews knew that if the wall of Jerusalem was rebuilt, the Jewish people might become a powerful enemy.
They must cease and desist.
Sanballat, a Horonite, and Tobiah, an official from Ammon, marched right up to the place where the people gathered to begin work.
Pathetic. What a ragtag group.
Why bother to even start? You shall never finish.
Plus, the king is gonna think you're trying to take over.
Nehemiah kept his cool.
The God of heaven will give us success. We serve Him. So we'll start rebuilding the walls.
Good luck with that.
Nehemiah and the Israelites didn't need luck. They needed God's help. It was true that a few of the Jewish people were builders.
Let's see. We've got priests, nobles, goldsmiths, perfume makers, farmers, grape growers, shepherds, any stonemasons. Well, let's get organized.
Where he could, Nehemiah assigned each family group to work on a section of the wall closest to their home.
Eliashib, you and the other priests will rebuild the sheep gate. Then, work on the wall up to the Tower of the 100.
On it.
Hassanah's family, I want you to work on the fish gate, lay its beams, and repair the doors with metal bolts and bars.
We've got this.
Nehemiah continued to give each family or group a part of the wall to rebuild. Old and young, men and women, they put everything they had to gather the fallen stones and hewing beams. In a short time, the wall began to rise again.
Inconceivable.
Sanballat and Tobiah were shocked to see the Jews actually making progress. They would mock the work to anyone who would listen.
Do those Jews think they can make the wall new in a single day? Preposterous! The stones are all scattered and piled up like garbage.
I suppose an itty-bitty fox tried to climb up on that excuse for a wall. Ah! The whole thing would fall down.
Once again, Nehemiah ignored the heckling. Instead, he prayed as he worked.
God, please listen to our prayer. Some people hate us. They're saying bad things about us. Don't hide your eyes from their guilt.
With a burst of energy, the people worked even harder until the wall was half as high as it needed to be.
Preposterous!
Time for some action.
Tobiah and Sanballat began to plot with the surrounding nations to attack Jerusalem before the wall could be finished.
We must set guards, day and night.
Even with guards in place, enemies threatened, and the Jews were exhausted.
There's rubble everywhere, and our enemies say that no matter where we are, they'll attack.
Nehemiah refused to be distracted. He stationed families at the weakest parts of the walls, armed with swords, spears, and bows.
Don't be afraid. Fight for your families.
From that day, everyone carried their weapons, even as they worked.
If you hear the sound of the trumpet, run to join us. God will fight for us.
Nehemiah and the Jews worked from the very first light of sunrise until the stars came out at night. At last, The wall itself was finished.
It's full height. All the gaps are filled. But we can't rest yet. The entrance gate still must be repaired.
Sanballat was furious, but he had another play to make. So he sent a message to Nehemiah, who was working high on the wall.
Sanballat says, "Come, let's talk with one another. Let's meet in one of the villages on the plain of Ono."
Oh no, I don't think so.
Nehemiah knew perfectly well they were planning to harm him, but he stayed focused on the work and sent his own messenger to Sanballat.
Nehemiah says, I am working on a huge project. Why should the work stop while I leave it? Why should I go down and talk with you?
Inconceivable! Try again.
5 times, Sanballat sent messages. He even threatened to tell the Persian king that Nehemiah was trying to make himself king.
Tell Sanballat you're just making that up.
Oh, I'll have to send another message.
Time for a new strategy.
Sanballat made one last desperate attempt. He hired a man named Shemaiah to make Nehemiah look bad with his own people.
Nehemiah, some men are coming at night to kill you. Let's go hide in the temple and lock the doors.
Nehemiah knew that God had not sent Shemaiah.
Should a man like me run away? No, I won't go.
Once again, Nehemiah saw through the tricks of his enemies. Instead of hiding away and looking foolish, he trusted God and doubled down on the work. On the 52nd day of work, the wall and gates were finished.
No!
The wall had been finished in record time by a group of ordinary, everyday people. It was clear to everyone that God had helped Nehemiah and the Jews stay focused and finish strong.
Can't talk now. Gotta focus. Sorry about that. It's so easy to get distracted sometimes, isn't it? I mean, you probably don't get distracted by alarms and flashing lights, but there are a lot of things that can distract you. When you're supposed to be focusing on homework, you might get distracted by the TV or the internet. When you're supposed to be cleaning your room, you might end up playing with your toys. When you're supposed to be listening to your teacher, you're making funny faces at your friends. We get distracted by our stuff, by other people, even by our own thoughts and worries. There's so many things fighting for our focus. It can be overwhelming. I mean, look at Nehemiah. He was rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. He had enemies on the outside and people fighting with each other on the inside. It would have been so easy for him to get distracted, but he stayed focused. I mean, look at Jesus. There were a lot of things that could have distracted Jesus from doing what he came here to do. But he stayed focused on what was most important, saving the world and making it possible for us to have a relationship with God. Staying focused isn't always easy, but when you focus, you can get things done quicker and better. So, the one thing to remember today is this: stay focused on what needs to be done. If you need help, take a minute or two to talk to God before you have something you need to focus on, and try to steer clear of the things that can distract you. I'm putting you on silent, and when in doubt, consult the Space Travel Manual, if you have one. What do all the lights mean? All the lights, all the lights, all the lights, all the lights. Oh. Dance party.
want to be rich. I want to be cool.
I want to be pretty.
I want to be successful.
I want to be cool. I want to be powerful.
I want to be rich.
I want to be popular. I want to be clever.
I want to be successful. I want to be pure.
I want to be heartbroken.
I want to be merciful.
I want to be humble.
I want to be hungry.
I want to be gentle. I want to be a peacemaker.
I want to be persecuted.
Just be.
Bye, Mom.
So if you have an older brother or sister, you probably know the feeling of wanting to be just like them. Or maybe you did when you were a kid and now you're like, no, I'm good, okay? But we go through phases where we look up to the siblings ahead of us, for those of you who have siblings ahead of you. They can do no wrong and their attention means everything to us. Now, for me, I grew up in somewhat of a musical family. My mom plays the piano and we always were in choir or chorus at church. And I have 3 older sisters and they can all sing. So I just assumed I would follow in their footsteps. And again, I would sing with the choir at church and just, no one really noticed if I could sing well or not. And it wasn't until I got to high school and I tried out for a musical theater production that I realized something. It's the same thing that the 3 people who were in the room for my audition realized. I can't sing. Like not even a little bit. Like it was really, really awful, y'all. And not only did I not make that musical theater production, but I realized that I'm not musical at all. I just assumed I was supposed to be musical because my sisters were. Now, looking back, I realized that, some of me imitating and copying my sisters was because I looked up to them. But it was also me trying to figure out who I was. Am I a singer like my sisters are? Was I supposed to be just a younger version of them? Or was I supposed to be someone different with my own interests, my own personality? Now, I may not have used those words, but there was a big question I was asking at that time in my life. Who am I? Who am I? Now, like me, you probably don't use those actual words, who am I? But you may have wondered or thought about some version of this question. Like what we're really asking is about our identity. Identity is what makes us us. It's what makes us unique. It's what causes us to stand out and be different. And if you're like me, you can sometimes struggle to even begin understanding how to answer this question. Now, the tricky thing about identity is that most of the time, we're not asking the question with just ourselves in mind. We're deciding who we are based on what the people around us think of us, or based on who they are. Like we tend to think of identity as what others expect of us. We think about what other people want us to be or what they need us to be. We constantly feel the pressure to live up to the expectations of family or friends or teachers, coaches. Our parents want us to be responsible, so we see responsible as being part of our identity. Or coaches want us to be a leader, so we make that part of our identity. It's not who we actually are as much as it is what people think we should be. Now, at the same time, we tend to connect our identity to areas where we feel judged by others. We see ourselves through the lens of being not enough of whatever they expect from us. We're not, funny enough, tall enough, confident enough, the list athletic enough, the list goes on and on. We connect who we are to areas where we feel like we don't measure up. And for you, maybe you realize that you're more than the label or judgment others have placed on you, but you're not sure what that means or what that even looks like. You just know that what others have given you is an incomplete picture, and there's more to you than other people realize. Also, we tend to connect our identity to our image. We see our identity as how we appear to others. Others see us as a star athlete, so that's how we see ourselves.
Our teachers see us as a below average student, so that's how we see ourselves. At the end of the day, the question is the same. When it comes to identity, look, the thing that bounces around in our head, the thing that feeds our insecurity or drives the decisions we make and determines the friends we have is this one big question: am I enough? Am I enough? Now, some of you may answer this question with a yes, but you probably say yes, but. And you may be quick to point out the areas where you're not measuring up. Because let's be honest, the areas where we don't measure up seem to take up a lot more of our thinking than the areas where we do, right? Now, others of you may answer the question by saying, nope, no way, because no matter what anyone tells us, we just have a hard time believing that we could ever possibly be enough. Now, however you'd answer that question, here's the good news. What we talk about today has the potential to be a game changer for you and the way you answer it moving forward. Now, I probably don't have to tell you this, but people have been wondering, am I enough since the beginning of time? And today we're going to look back at an interaction between Jesus and a group of people in the book of John, which is one of the 4 books in the Bible that are accounts of Jesus' life on earth. In this particular account, John records a miracle that Jesus performed. All right, check this out. After this, Jesus went across the Galilee Sea, that is the Tiberias Sea. A large crowd followed him because they had seen the miraculous signs he had done among the sick. Jesus went up to a mountain and sat there with his disciples. It was nearly time for Passover, the Jewish festival. Jesus looked up and saw the large crowd coming toward him. He asked Philip, "Where will we buy food to feed these people?" Jesus said this to test him, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "More than half a year's salary worth of food wouldn't be enough for each person to have even a little bit." So right away we see that there was a problem. Jesus preached too long and now the people are too hungry and the disciples are freaking out. I would be too. Like, hungry people become hangry people. You know what I mean? I don't trust myself to not lose my mind when I skip a meal. So the disciples are wondering, hey, what are we gonna do? Should we send them home? Like, none of us make enough money to buy enough food to feed these people. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, "A youth here has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that for a crowd like this?" Now, Andrew mentions that there's a youth who has some food with them. And what's interesting here is that we aren't even told if this youth is a boy or a girl. It's just a young person, maybe even a child. And in the first century culture, that would have made this kid not so valuable in the eyes of society. In fact, children tended to be viewed only as property. The only value children had was in what they could do for their family. But there's something else to notice. The young person didn't even have regular bread. He or she had barley bread. And it's interesting that John decided to include that detail because back then, this was the kind of bread that people who were poor ate. This was the kind of bread you ate when you didn't have a lot of money or status. This child obviously didn't come from a family with a lot, but he or she was willing to use what they had anyway. John continues. Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass there. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread. When he had given thanks, he distributed it to those who were sitting there. He did the same with the fish, each getting as much as they wanted. When they had plenty to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftover pieces so that nothing will be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves that had been left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw that he had done a miraculous sign, they said, "This is truly the prophet who is coming into the world." And Jesus understood that they were about to come and force him to be their king. So he took a refuge again, alone on a mountain. So Jesus did something only he could do. He took a little bit of barley bread and a little bit of fish, and he fed an entire crowd. In fact, there ended up being so much food that there were even some leftovers. It's a crazy miracle. Jesus is obviously the hero of this story, but John makes it a point to draw attention to a different hero. The youth in the story, not given a name, not coming from wealth or privilege, not having a lot to offer, was still featured front and center. And I think there's a reason for that. John doesn't want us to forget the role that Jesus allowed that kid to have. Look, Jesus could have provided the food with no help at all. He made blind people see. He brought dead people back to life. It would have been nothing for him to snap his fingers and just make food happen out of nowhere. But he doesn't. He takes the food from a barely noticed child. Why? Because Jesus knew who this child was. This child was made in the image of God, and that alone made this kid a part of the story worth celebrating for all of us. Jesus knew that he wasn't limited by what this kid had or what this kid didn't have, and the same is true for you. Jesus makes what we have and who we are enough. In fact, I want you to think of it this way. You are enough because Jesus says you are enough. Let me say that again. You are enough because Jesus says you are enough.
When it comes to comparison, we will always find someone else who is seemingly better than us. And the second problem with this mindset, we compare ourselves to ourselves. We all have an invisible standard that we need to live up to. And as soon as we fail in that area, we decide we're not enough. Or let's say you play a great game. That's awesome. But then that game becomes your new standard, which means you expect to play like that every time. It's like we've raised the standard on what is enough. So you move that line higher and higher, hoping that you feel enough the next time that you play. Everyone in this room has felt not enough at some point. Even the people who seem like they have it all together, it's a universal experience. And if we're honest, we all have a hard time liking the person who doesn't measure up, the person who isn't enough. But when we add Jesus to the equation, we can stop trying to prove that we're enough, because he takes whatever we have and he makes it enough.
He turns our not enough into enough. See, it's exhausting to have so much of our identity tied up in what other people think, expect, or want from us. It makes it feel like the bar is always moving and the standard is always changing. We may be enough in this situation, but with this person today, but what about tomorrow? Who knows? It may all change, which is what makes what Jesus says and do such good news for us. His love for us doesn't change. He isn't temperamental. He isn't waiting to see how we perform. He isn't wondering what we can offer or bring to the table. He knows all that he needs to know. You are enough because Jesus says you are enough. And the feeling of not being enough, it's just part of being a human being. At some point or another, we're all gonna deal with it. So in response, sometimes we try to prove that we have what it takes. We practice harder, study harder, work harder, and put in more energy. We try to prove to people that we're the best athlete, we're the most accomplished student, or the employee of the month. Or on the flip side, sometimes we try to hide so that no one notices. Feeling like we're not enough feeds our insecurities, so we do everything we can to keep people from seeing it or sometimes even noticing us. So what can we do? What should we do when these feelings come up? I want you to start by asking yourself these questions. Number one, where in your life do you feel like you aren't enough? Is it around friends? Is it at home? When it comes to grades or sports or church? That's question number one. Number two, when you don't feel like you are enough, do you tend to respond by hiding or maybe trying to prove yourself or something different altogether? And then number three, how different would your life look if you stopped trying to prove yourself or hide in this particular area? Or to put it another way, what would it look like to believe Jesus when he says that you are enough? Number four, when you feel that way, how are you going to remember that you are enough? So one tip from my own experience, memorizing what God says is true about me helps me when I start to believe differently. Ephesians 2:10 may be a good place to start, so you check it out, all right? When we battle the feeling of not being enough, one of the worst things you and I can do is to believe that we have to deal with it all by ourselves. And that's why we care so much about small groups. That's why we just have so much respect for our small group leaders, because everyone needs someone to remind them what is true when it doesn't feel like it's true to them. So just imagine what might be possible if you started to believe that you are enough. And what if the people in your small group started to believe that they were enough? What if you walked into school believing that about yourself so that you could take a break from trying to prove or trying to hide from everybody? I really believe it could change you. I believe it could change the people around you. You are enough. Listen, you are enough because Jesus says you are enough. That's really great, and it's really, really true news. Love you.